Hi boys and girls, I'm going to read to you chapters 31 and 32 today from Maniac. It was still dark when Maniac awoke on Christmas morning. Within an hour or two, the holiday would come bounding down the stairs and squealing round the tinseled trees of Two Mills. But for the moment, Christmas bided its time outside, a purer presence. Maniac shook Grayson awake, but stayed the old man's hand when he reached to turn on the light. They bundled themselves and ventured into the silent night. Maniac carried a paper bag. Snow had fallen several days before. In much of this town it had been plowed, shoveled, and slushed away. But in the park, along the creek, the woods, the playing fields, the playground, it still lay undisturbed, save for the tracks of rabbits and squirrels. Beyond the tall pines, stars glittered like snowflakes, reluctant to fall. They visited their tree. They stood silently just to be near it, letting the magic of it drift over them. In the pine-patched moonlight, the Queen Anne's goblets looked for all of the world like a filigree silver. So it looked all peaceful and beautiful, like a silvery white glistening. They walked the creek woods all the way to the zoo, meandering wordlessly throughout the snowy enchantment. They were just enjoying themselves and enjoying the beauty. As if by design, they both stopped at the same spot, above the half-submerged rooty clump of a fallen tree. Somewhere under there, they knew, was the den of a family of muskrats. The old man lay in a pine branch at the doorway, and Maniac whispered, "Merry Christmas." They visited the animals at the zoo, at least the outdoor ones, wishing them a happy holiday. The ducks seemed particularly pleased to see them. By the time they came to the buffalo pen, dawn was showing through the trees. Before the old man finished saying, "Want a boost?" Maniac was up and over the fence. If Mother Buffalo was glad to see the fence-hopping human again, she didn't show it. But Baby came trotting over, and the two of them had a warm reunion. Before leaving, Maniac reached into his paper bag and he brought out a present. "For you," he said. It was a scarf, or rather 3 scarves tied together. He wrapped them around Baby's neck. "Next year, I'll get you stockings for your horns," he grinned. "If you have them by then." A final nuzzle, and he was back over the fence. They headed back home as the town awoke. Breakfast was eggnog and hot tea and cookies and carols and colored lights and love. As in all the Christmas homes, the giraffes were under the tree. Maniac gave Grayson a pair of gloves and a woolen cap and a book. The book did not appear to be as sturdy as the others lying around. The cover was blue construction paper, and the spine, instead of being bound, was stapled. The text was hand-lettered, and the pictures were stick figures. The title was "The Man Who Struck Out Willie Mays." The author's name, which Grayson read aloud with some difficulty, was Jeffrey L. McGee. Maniac, in his turn, opened packages to find a pair of gloves, a box of butterscotch crimpets, and a span new snow-white, never-used baseball. He was overjoyed. He rushed to the old man and hugged him. The old man put up with that for a second, but then he pulled away. "Hold on," he said. He went to one of the baseball equipment bags and reached in, tunneled down to the bottom, and came up with another package. This one was wrapped crudely in newspaper. "Hiding this one," he said. "Didn't know if you're the kind of kid that sneaks and looks." And Maniac tore it open and gaped helplessly when he saw what it was. To anyone else, it was a ratty old scrap of leather, barely recognizable as a baseball glove, fit for the garbage can. But Maniac knew at once that this was Grayson's, the one that he had played with all those years in the minors. It was limp, flat, and its pocket long since gone. Slowly, timidly, as though entering a shrine, the boy's fingers crept into it, flex-curled the cracked leather, brought it back to shape, to life. He laid the new ball in the palm, pressured the glove and the ball together, and the glove remembered and gave way and made a pocket for the ball. The boy could not take his eyes off of the glove. The old man could not take his eyes off of the boy. The record player finished the Christmas polka and clicked off, and for a long time there was silence. 5 days later, the old man was dead. Chapter 32. Most mornings, Grayson would be the first one out of bed. He would turn on the space heater, visit the bandshell lavatory, which is the bathroom, and then heat up some water, get breakfast ready, and finally wake the boy with a gentle shake of the shoulder. On December 30th, it was the silence that woke Maniac in the cold. The space heater wasn't on, no steaming cup set at the table, and the old man was still under the covers. Maniac went over. Grayson, he shook the old man. Grayson? And he turned the old man's hand. It was cold. Grayson! He didn't run to the superintendent's office. He didn't run to the nearest house. He knew. He held the old limp hand that had thrown the pitch that struck out Willie Mays, that had betrayed the old man's stoic ways by giving him a squeeze. He began talking to the old man about places he had been on the road, about places the two of them might have gone to, about everything. Then he began to read aloud. He read aloud all the books the old man was learning to read, and he finished with the old man's favorite, Mike Mulligan's Steam Shovel, which is also one of my favorites. When he looked out the window, it was night. He dragged his chest protectors along the old man's mat, and he lay down, and only then, when he closed his eyes, did he cry. The funeral, such as it was, took place on the 3rd day of the new year. Maniac had at least gone to tell someone, the zookeeper, and from then on, he pretty much stayed out of the way. Grayson came to the cemetery in a wooden box. The pallbearers were unknown to Maniac. The pallbearers are men that were carrying Grayson's casket to the cemetery. They were members of the town's trash collecting, and as they huffed and bent to lay the box over the hole, they smelled of pine and rotten fruit. Maniac was the only mourner. He had thought the park superintendent might show, or the attendant at the Y locker room, or maybe the lady who ran the park food stand in the summer. No one was there. Only Maniac and the man from the funeral home and the 6 pallbearers and the 2 men off to the side, leaning on a little hole-digging tractor that made Maniac think of something. He smiled inwardly. He said, "Hey, Grayson, look, Mike Mulligan's Steam Shovel is ready to help you." And high above, a silver plane crossed the sky, silent as a spider. A voice startled Maniac. "When's he coming?" It was one of the pallbearers. The man from the funeral home pushed down the top of his black leather glove to expose his watch. "He should be here now. Should have been here 5 minutes ago." "How long we gotta wait?" The funeral man shrugged. All but one of the pallbearers shrugged. Maniac wished he hadn't come. This event had nothing to do with the man who had once lived in the body that's in the wooden box. "I'm freezing," a pallbearer announced. "Me too," said another. "Hey, called one of the gravediggers, "we ain't waiting all day to fill that hole." Everyone looked to the man in the long black coat. He looked again at his watch. Traffic, probably. The minister, thought Maniac. That's who we're waiting for. A pallbearer went over to the funeral man. "We hauled it right here. Ain't that enough? They only give us an hour." Another pallbearer chimed in. "Let's go get some donuts." "Hot coffee, baby." Loud clanks. A grave digger was striking the baby steam shovel with a spade. The funeral man sighed. He pulled out his watch, noticing the time. He said, "Give it 2 more minutes, and then we'll see." Maniac waited for one of those minutes, searching the horizons for sign of a minister. Whatever was going to happen at the end of the next minute, he didn't want to see it, so he ran. "Hey, kid," they called. "Yo, kid." But he was running. And the next chapter actually starts one of the last parts, which is part 3 in Maniac, and I will read you some more of that later.